Netflix is planning its biggest year yet with a plan to release 70 original movies throughout 2021. That's according to a statement from the company today. This coming as the movie business remains stuck in limbo. Joining me now from Los Angeles is Bloomberg News' screen time author, Lucas Shaw. Hey, Lucas, great to see you this afternoon. In your recent newsletter that looks at the future of entertainment, you wrote how Netflix has scaled up its operations over the past few years under film chief Scott Stuber. What has his approach been?
His approach has been to replicate the output of just about every movie studio on earth in one company. When he joined the company a few years ago, he had a long history as a producer and as a studio exec. He brought relationships with a lot of different people. Netflix had already made a mark kind of acquiring movies at film festivals like Sundance and Toronto, producing dramas and documentaries and some comedies. They had an early deal with Adam Sandler. Stuber has really broadened their approach so that just looking at the slate for this year, they've got an action comedy with Dwayne Johnson and Ryan Reynolds, which is a kind of big, explosive movie you'd expect to see in the summer. They've got more than a dozen dramas. They've got a Western movie that stars Idris Elba and is produced by Jay-Z. They've got a ton of rom-coms, which is a genre that Netflix has really brought back. And that doesn't even include, I think it's 8 animated movies, at least 10 movies that aren't in English. So they've got a little bit of something for everybody.
The list goes on and on. I want to know how they're pulling this off in 2021 at a time when some studios have had to really scale back their production because of the pandemic. How are they making this work in a time when we have to be socially distanced, wear masks, and quarantine?
Well, it's pretty simple. You watch Netflix at home.
The Netflix is, how are they doing this?
Oh, the production.
Yeah.
I think a lot of these movies in advance. Some of them are acquisition. Some of them, production outside of the U.S. Has continued. And there was a period this year where production was very active and they were able to finish things. So a project like Red Notice, which was supposed to shoot in multiple parts of the world. I think when production shut down, they were either in Atlanta or Italy. I know, 2 totally different places. But they had done some of the movie. They resumed production. They finished it when production was back up and running. And so they have it ready to go for this year because they took advantage of that window.
Lucas, you've been covering Netflix for years, and one thing that I've kind of struggled to really characterize is Netflix's identity. I kind of think of it as attempting to appeal to kind of every person in your household because they have these different profiles and have so much content. What is Netflix?
I think you nailed it right there, which is that Netflix is a personalized experience. And so the idea is they're producing at such a volume that everybody's Netflix experience is different. And while it is a little bit corporate speak, it's true to the extent that if you ever take a look at what your relative, your spouse, your friend's Netflix account looks like compared to yours, it's totally different. And so what I see when I open the app, it is something that is in theory tailored for me. It means there are things that I see that I don't like. A lot of us feel a sense of being overwhelmed by what they do. So there's not, I would say, one clear kind of type of show or brand the way that HBO has had in the past, or you might think of CBS with a particular type of procedural, or there's a certain comedy that was on NBC. Netflix is kind of doing all of those things, and what you encounter there depends a little bit on what you've been watching.
Shareholders have been okay thus far with Netflix spending all this money to produce this new content. As you point out in your most recent article, the stock was up 67% last year, outpacing both the NASDAQ 100 and the S&P 500. What about moving forward? What are investor expectations to get cash burn under control?
The cash burn will be better in fiscal 2020, which they'll report kind of the year end. I think it's next week. It'll be better than it ever has been, in part because production slowed down. They couldn't make as much. They've said that I think 2019 was going to be their peak cash burn. They are still negative free cash flow, but it's moving in the right direction. I think the bigger question for investors is, was this year the peak? I think there was already a sense that maybe 2018, 2019 would be the peak in new subscriber additions. 2020, they added so many people in the first half of the year because everybody was stuck at home. I think they're going to surpass 30 million subscribers this year. That's probably the most that they will ever hit. Netflix has tried for a couple of years to shift some of the narrative to looking at their revenue and eventually their profitability, because Netflix has phased in a bunch of price increases. And so their revenue growth has been really, really strong. So far, investors remain fixated on the subscriber growth, and I'll be really interested to see what happens in the next couple of years, when my hunch would be that Disney, HBO Max, a couple of other services might grow more in a growth rate just because they're growing from a smaller base.
Yeah, sadly, I pay for every single one of those at this point. Lucas, Bloomberg News' Screen Time author Lucas Shaw, joining us live from Los Angeles. Thank you, as always, for your time.
The biggest stories the moment they happen from around the globe. Subscribe to Bloomberg Quick Take now for insight in an instant.